Hi, this is Jessica DeMassa from WTF Health, and I am here at Health Datapalooza, and joining me right now I have Jenn Dennard, and she is the founder of HealthITchicks. Welcome, Jen. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to meet you. I really want to get a read on what you think about what's happening with women in health technology or what's not happening with women in health technology. So give us a state of play.
Well, to coin a vintage phrase, I do think we've come a long way. Healthcare technology, the industry, I feel like in the last 18 months to 2 years has really evolved in terms of putting a spotlight on just where women are in the industry, how we can move them forward from where we've been. There's been a lot of, I guess, spotlight on the gender wage gap, moving more women into C-suite positions. There's been a huge focus from a myriad of organizations on mentorship. And what's been really encouraging to me is that both women and men are paying attention and participating in dialogues that communities like HealthITchicks are trying to stay in the spotlight.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you to break down all of that for me, because no, really, there's a lot there, and especially that last point about the guys. So before we get there, though, we've come a long way. In 2 years, you said too, the last 2 years have been particularly transformative. What do you think kind of lit the fire, so to speak?
Well, before movements like Me Too and Time's Up, we had just more grassroots elements as far as women being in the industry, needing a voice, and needing to craft kind of a dialogue around where they were and where they wanted to go. I feel like organizations like HIMSS has done a tremendous amount of work in helping to shape that conversation. They came out with their first wage or compensation study focusing on gender as an element of the study. And since then, they've built up a real media, I guess, package around it. And, HIMSS is a big organization.
Yeah.
They're global. And so having them kind of in our corner has really gotten the word out.
Jump in there real quick and tell me some of that stuff that came out of that wage gap study, if you know it. Anything that struck you coming out of there for those who maybe didn't run across it?
It's disappointing.
Well, I'm sure. Nobody expected you to have good news there, Jen. I want to just tell you that right now.
It just emphasizes what many of us already knew, that women are making, 18 cents to 20 cents less on the dollar than the average male for a comparable position. They've done the study twice now, and I'm fairly certain that the most recent study, there was no improvement, which is a little disheartening.
Yeah.
But I feel, HealthITchicks had a session here yesterday at Health Datapalooza where we focused on wage gap. We had a great conversation, and one of the points that came up time and again is you can't change it unless you know about it and talk about it and make people aware of it. So I feel like our community, HIMSS, the buzz going on at Health Datapalooza with sessions like the one we had yesterday, hashtags around equal pay day, things like that are really starting to help move the conversation forward.
What else can women do? Were there any kind of takeaways, action items out of the conversation on the panel?
There was a really interesting thread that emerged that I kind of didn't expect, but was really glad that was brought up. Devin McGraw, who used to work for OCR and now is with a startup called Citizen, brought up the point that so many of the headlines that we see today kind of put the onus of the problem on women, as if we haven't been doing enough. And that's not typically the case. It's more of a systemic issue. And so, again, it just comes down to awareness. And we went through some tactical steps that you can take. Always negotiate. Don't be afraid. Have more confidence. Then most women feel like they don't deserve the raise or shouldn't ask for it. They should, go with the flow. And chances are, if you have hard data, if you do benchmarking, if you even engage a career coach, which a lot of women in our audience yesterday did, then you can get that raise, get that promotion, and along comes the confidence, and along comes the ability to help younger women coming up through the ranks. And soon that systemic issue hopefully will dissolve a little bit.
I wanted to ask too, you had mentioned it, with guys. How do you have a conversation like this with guys? And the reason I ask this is I've had a couple of different conversations with a couple of different men about, they're like, I want to support this. I've got daughters. I don't want them to be, left behind. I don't like the way this is, but I don't know how to be supportive of women in health tech and getting equal pay. I don't know how to do it. So what advice would you offer for guys?
Well, it can be uncomfortable. I'll be honest. We actually had a breakout session on creating male allies yesterday.
Okay.
And we had a gentleman come and sit down with us because he was so intent on just what you explained. How do I join this conversation and not be seen as an adversary or not be seen as someone who wants to prevent you from succeeding? And again, it's just open dialogues. If you're on Twitter like me, which I know you are, you're constantly reading, constantly looking to thought leaders. And I came across a great article about some initiatives that Salesforce has been doing to make sure that men, particularly those in the C-suite, are really being intentional about giving women a voice within the company. So aside from the whole wage issue, the CEO, I'm not going to say his name because I'll get it wrong. He's instituted rules where if you're going to call a meeting, 30% of the participants have to be women, and you always give women a voice in the meeting. Don't let them get talked over. Don't mansplain to them. Google that term.
Yeah, I love that.
But yeah, it can be a delicate thing.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to have the conversation. Don't be afraid to go to your male colleagues if you feel like they are open to it and say, hey, I'd be happy to help you talk about this, discuss this. Let's get into the weeds with this and make a difference.
And then what about like some people who say, okay, well, 30% of the meeting has to be women, so I'm just being asked as a woman to like fill a quota.
Right.
What do you say to that?
Yeah, you don't want to be the quota filler, but at the same time, I feel like you also need to think about the women who will be coming up behind you. Mm-hmm. So change is hard, but sometimes you have to be willing to kind of take the leap. Maybe take one for the team, yeah, and hopefully it'll all work out for the best. It's kind of still early days with these sorts of tactics,
yeah.
So.
I'm there to fill the quota one day, and I'm running the meeting the next. Well, that's what we're aiming for. All right, so I wanted to ask you too, is there anybody in like health IT or health tech who's a woman who you admire? Like, who do you read? Who do you follow? I mean, we talked about like who can we look up to? Who do you look up to?
There are several, and I'm going to put them in the category of tweeters and not so heavy tweeters.
Okay.
I had the good fortune to work with a kind of informal mentor. Her name is Cynthia Porter. She runs a market research company for healthcare called Porter Research. She's been in healthcare technology, pharma for 30 plus years.
Okay.
And she's seen it all as far as coming up through the ranks, being the only woman in the room. And she imparted so much wisdom to me. And I think the biggest piece of advice I have gained from her, and one that she emphasizes every time that we're still together, is whenever she's with me or whenever she's with someone that she's investing in, she will always put them forward. So no matter who she's talking to, it could be the President of the United States, it could be the president of some company that she's working with. Even if she's next to an intern, she will praise them and single them out for something positive, which I really admire.
That's really cool.
And then kind of on the more social media savvy side, I adore Sue Shade. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's at SG Shade on Twitter, and
okay.
She runs a fantastic blog. She's been the Chime CIO of the Year. She's been a C-suiter at several different health systems, and now she's running her own consulting firm because she wanted work-life balance. She's a grandmother now, and so I admire that.
That's fantastic. All right, last question for you, Jen, while we got you here. All right, so looking ahead, this is WTF Health, so we're going to look at what's the future because, we know how things are WTF right now. So what does this look like? I mean, what's your hope, I guess? Like, things have moved, you said, pretty progressively the last 2 years. What do you think's ahead for the next 5-10 years? Do you think we'll achieve parity? Will there be a line at the ladies' room at Hims one day?
I hope so. I think so. It's going to come down to exposure, shining that spotlight, and then, of course, how amenable companies are to helping that from within. So I shared some interesting stats from Glamour magazine's latest issue. I don't know if any ladies out there read Glamour, but they devoted their whole current issue to money.
Okay.
And the biggest majority of their readers believe that employees who negotiate better will earn more money. They feel the second kind of largest response was companies. Companies are going to be the ones to make the change. And I feel like companies have a real voice in the conversation. They can really make an impact. Earlier today, we heard Deputy Secretary Eric Hargan, let me get his title right, from HHS talk about how the private sector is making more progress in information sharing than the government is. And so it kind of reflects where I think women in healthcare technology are too. our private sector, the vendors, I think, have a big part to play.
Very good. Well, Jenn, thank you so much for talking
Thanks
with
for
me.
having me.
If anybody wants to follow Jenn, what are you on Twitter? Your handle is?
I am at Jenn Dennard. You can also follow us at HealthITchicks.
Yes, and the hashtag, if you're going to hashtag it, is #HealthITchicks. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jessica DeMassa with WTF Health here at Health Datapalooza. Thanks for joining us.